But your current file goes off your first name, middle initial, last name. It takes your first full name and it tries to find a file. That's not enough information. So then it goes and adds the first single digit of the person's name. Then it goes into the next one. Then it hits the previous address. And it goes through the little previous address part. Then it goes from the previous address. It still can't find it. There's too many people with the same similar name within the system. So then it goes and it goes to the next address. And it goes to the next address. Nobody else lives at the same address with those same initials. So now it stops because it didn't find any other person. So it basically has found a file. So it doesn't have to have the Social Security number or your date of birth to find you. Really, all it needs is your address, your name, and that's it. And it can find your and a previous address. It's the only thing they need to find the file. Okay, this is how it normally finds a file. Over here is how you manipulate the file. You manipulate the file, or how you can change your information, your personal identification information, not breaking any law, just changing how the information is done by using a middle name instead of a first name, and the first name is the middle name, and same last name, same Social Security number. You do a name change. You take the name change. The court gives you 2 documents. One for DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles, and the other one for SSN. Okay? You go into a state that's a neighboring state. Okay? You take the well, first of all, before you go in the neighboring state, you take the letter for the SSN number, go to Social Security, have them change the name on the Social Security number. Then you go into the neighboring state, go to DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles, and have them issue you an ID or a driver's license, whatever you want them to issue, they issue it. Using a new mailing address, because your new mailing address is one that you've chosen. Your previous mailing address is the previous mailing address that you decided where you wanted to move your mail from. So you move the mail from the previous address, you do a change of mail, I forget what you call them, change of mailing address, change of address things that the post office has, changing it from the new previous address to the new mailing address. See, the problem that the system has is it does not know how long you have lived at your current address. Well, it knows how long you lived at the current address, but if it can't find the file, the previous address, it has no clue how long you've been there. Oh. Because you say, this is my current address, this is my previous address, the file itself doesn't know how long it's been there, how long you've lived there, how long you've received mail there, or anything. All the system knows is, this is the name, this is the address, these are the 2 addresses that we have in the file. You could, if you've moved a lot, you have a lot of addresses. If you list every address, every single address you've lived at, put it on a piece of paper, you should be able to come up with your file. Because they should be able to find it from the addresses. All those, they should be able to find out everything you've ever done in your whole life. Which is a good thing, in some cases. But there's a problem. The problem is the idiots that type in your information on the credit card applications. And let's say you fill out your whole name. So you write out your whole name. Okay? One of the credit card companies decide to use your middle initial instead of your middle name, even though you write out your middle name. So you have one with just the middle initial. We'll just use me. We'll go James. Okay? So one file looks like that. One file looks like this. One file looks like this. And one Access file can look like this. And let's say when you're 16, you were stupid and you filled out an application. My sister and wife see this on the board, they're going to laugh. Because when my sisters call me this name, it's war. But these, let's say these are 4 separate different files. This is one file, but it has 4 different names in the file. They have 4 different ways that they can access the file. Okay, the problem is you normally only use this version. But for some reason, the idiots left your middle name out even though you use your middle name. So that creates a file variation. Okay, what the new Fair Credit Reporting Act says is that you can have them only pull this name and isolate it and make it a separate file. And then you can have them isolate this name. And you can have them isolate this name, this version. And you can have them isolate all the way down, each one.
So each version of your name has to be a separate file.
Well, you're going to ask them to split each. So let's say version 1, which is this, you give them a California address. This one you give them a Nevada address. Okay, this one you give them a Washington address to split the file. Because if you tell them to do it and pull it, you give them the address you want them to pull it from. If you pay for the report, it's going to just give you this name. You specifically want them to pull just that name. And that means if all of a sudden you had 40 inquiries, one of these has 5, one of these has 30, one of these has 2. What is that, 5? Yeah. What is it, 5, 6, 7, 8? And so on down the line. So whichever one has the least amount, that's the one you want to use to get a house. Because it has the least inquiries.
Wouldn't you use the one with the highest FICO score?
Well, the one with the least items pulled or the least items on it is going to have the highest FICO score. Because it sat there and that file hasn't been disrupted. Okay, so you have this. Everybody got that part? All right.
So that you apply for any credit or whatever you want in that name, in that particular name.
Yeah, but you split it, and the way that you can guarantee that it's split is when you pay for the file, it has everybody on it. Then you take that file, you specifically write, I want this name split from the file. Give me a report on just this name, and send it to this address here.
Oh, it has to be sent to that address?
Well, you can pick another address to send it, then you're guaranteed that it's split.
And you got to pay for the updated file too?
No, they're going to give you the updated file because it's mandatory that they split the file. Because the new Fair Credit Reporting Act says if there is a mixed file and you ask them to split your name from that file, they have to split it from that file. They can't keep them together, lumped together. Okay? Let's see, where else are we going?
They ask you
Well, if they ask you to do that, you can put in a request to the Federal Trade Commission and put in a complaint that it's not fair and equitable to the consumer to give them a credit, to give them a Social Security number when they didn't ask you for the Social Security number when they created the file. And the fact that you can pull a file without having a Social Security number makes it irrelevant to the file.
Okay.
Okay, under Section 602B of the Fair Credit Reporting Act states everything that they do, the credit bureaus, has to be fair and equitable to the consumer. If they didn't ask me for my Social Security number to create the file, I shouldn't have to give it to them in order for them to fix the file. So,
I guess, okay, I'm hung up on the thing you said.
okay.
They didn't ask you for the social security number.
Right. But yet they're going to ask you for the social security number for you to do a file.
Didn't they use the social security number to create the file? Because when
No.
you went to the bank to apply, you put your social security
No,
number.
the bank uses the social security number.
Well, so did the credit card.
The credit, no, they ask it. If you provide it, you don't have to provide it for them to pull a report. Okay, you do not have to provide your social security number for them to pull a report. They can pull it. It's up to them whether they're going to run the rest of the application if you don't provide it. But if, let's say you got the file, you paid for the file, they gave it to you. And you're going to split the file, you can do that by submitting a letter asking them, demanding them to split it, because the Fair Credit Reporting Act says that you can split this file from a mixed file. This is a mixed file, please split it. Okay, that allows you to split it. If they ask you for your social security number to do that, they're in violation of the Privacy Act, because they're asking something for you, and 602B of the Fair Credit Reporting Act states that it has to be fair and equitable to the consumer, not to the credit bureaus.
You're in violation of what again?
The Privacy Act. And in fact, a guy named Ken Yarborough wrote a letter to the Federal Trade Commission. The Federal Trade Commission said, now wait a minute. We're not in control of the Privacy Act. We're in control of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. We don't do nothing with the Privacy Act. And he goes, well, what about 602B of the Fair Credit Reporting Act? He says, oh, I think you got it there. So then the Federal Trade Commission issued a letter and a complaint, sent it to TransUnion, and TransUnion therefore had to pick which one of the multiple Social Securities that showed up in the file were correct. No, so they had to do what they didn't want to do. They had to choose one. Okay. They didn't want to have to choose one because maybe the one they choose isn't the one, or maybe it's the one that they do. So I mean, it's that part's neat. I mean, that's basically, let's see. I showed you how a blank credit file shows up. I showed you how it accidentally gets on the report. That's basically it for the credit bureau part.